A chance encounter. The late afternoon sun cast a golden glow over the city streets, bustling with the usual rhythm of life, cars honking, vendors shouting, and people hurrying to their destinations. Amidst the chaos, Keanu Reeves strolled quietly, his face partially obscured by a baseball cap and sunglasses. For him, walks like these offered a rare moment of peace, a chance to blend into the crowd and escape the pressures of fame. As he neared a small park, the noise softened, replaced by the rustling of leaves and the chirping of birds. Keanu spotted an empty bench beneath an old oak tree and made his way toward it. But as he approached, his gaze fell on two young figures sitting on the ground nearby, a boy and a girl, barely out of their teens, huddled together with a single worn blanket draped over their shoulders. A nervous approach. The twins, Ava and Aaron, noticed him before he reached the bench. Ava nudged her brother, whispering something, and they exchanged uncertain glances. Gathering her courage, Ava stood and took a hesitant step toward Keanu. "Excuse me, sir," she began, her voice trembling slightly. We were wondering if you could spare a minute?" Keanu stopped, his kind eyes meeting hers. "Of course," he said gently, sensing her nerves. "What's on your mind?" Aaron joined his sister, standing just behind her. "We're not asking for money," he blurted out quickly, as if anticipating rejection. We need someone to listen." A heartbreaking confession. Keanu gestured toward the bench. "Why don't we sit and talk?" The twins exchanged another glance, then followed him to the bench. They sat down hesitantly, keeping a careful distance, as if afraid of overstepping. Keanu settled in, his posture relaxed but attentive, and turned to face them. "I'm Keanu," he said, introducing himself simply. "What's your story?" For a moment, neither twin spoke, their gazes fixed on the ground. Finally, Ava broke the silence. "I'm Ava, and this is my brother, Aaron," she began, her voice quiet but steady. "We've been on the streets for about a year now. Our parents," she paused, her throat tightening. "They died in a car accident last summer." Aaron picked up where she left off. "After they died, everything fell apart. We lost our house, and no one in our family could take us in. We've been trying to figure things out, but it's been hard." Keanu listened intently, his heart aching as the twins recounted their struggles, how they'd bounced between shelters and slept in parks, how they relied on the kindness of strangers for food, and how they'd learned to watch out for each other in a world that often felt cold and unforgiving. "We've tried so many places," Ava said, her voice breaking. "People say they'll help, but they never do. Or they forget about us." Keanu's compassion. The twins fell silent, their story hanging heavily in the air. Keanu's chest tightened as he processed their words. Their pain was palpable, but so was their strength. Despite everything, they had each other, and they hadn't given up. "I'm so sorry for everything you've been through," Keanu said, his voice thick with emotion. "You've been incredibly brave." Ava looked up, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "We don't know what else to do," she admitted. We just want a chance. We want to go to school, have a home, something normal. But it feels impossible." Keanu nodded, his mind already racing with possibilities. "Thank you for sharing your story with me," he said. "I know it's not easy to trust people, especially after everything you've been through. But I want you to know, I'm here, and I'm going to do what I can to help." Aaron looked skeptical, but Ava managed a faint smile. "Thank you," she whispered. "Even if it's just listening, thank you." A new connection. The three of them sat together for a while longer, the weight of the twin story settling in Keanu's mind. He knew this chance encounter wasn't something he could walk away from. Their vulnerability, their resilience, it moved him deeply, compelling him to act. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, Keanu stood and handed Ava a small card with his contact information. "I'll be in touch soon," he said. "You've got my word." Ava and Aaron nodded, their expressions a mix of hope and guarded caution. As Keanu walked away, he glanced back at the twins huddled together under their blanket, determined to make good on his promise. Little did they know, their lives were about to change in ways they couldn't imagine. Hearing their story, Keanu couldn't stop thinking about Ava and Aaron. The next day, he arranged to meet them again, texting Ava on the number she hesitantly provided. They agreed to meet at the same park, this time in the quiet shade of a gazebo. When he arrived, he found the twins sitting side by side, their expressions wary but hopeful. "Hey," Keanu greeted them with a warm smile, his voice calm and welcoming. "Thanks for meeting me again. I'd like to hear more about you too, if that's okay." Ava and Aaron exchanged a glance before nodding. "Okay," Ava said softly. "The weight of loss." Ava began to speak, her voice trembling but steady. "It started with the accident. Our parents were driving home from visiting friends. A drunk driver hit them head-on." She paused, her hands clutching each other tightly. Aaron placed a hand on her shoulder, and she took a deep breath before continuing. "We were just finishing high school. It was supposed to be our year to figure out what we wanted to do next. But everything fell apart." Aaron picked up the story. "At first, we stayed with our aunt. She tried, but she couldn't afford to take care of us long term. Then the house," he hesitated, struggling to find the words. "It was foreclosed. We had nowhere to go." They described how they had bounced between shelters and the streets. The twins had refused to separate, even when they were told it might make finding support easier. "We've always been together," Ava said. "He's my rock, and I'm his." Dreams deferred. Keanu leaned forward, his elbows resting on his knees as he listened intently. "What were your plans before everything happened?" he asked gently. Ava's face lit up for a moment, a flicker of the life she had dreamed of before tragedy struck. "I wanted to be a teacher," she said. "I've always loved working with kids. I used to tutor younger students at school. But college feels impossible now." Aaron smiled faintly. "And I wanted to be a chef. Our mom used to let me experiment in the kitchen. She called me her mad scientist." His smile faded. "But without money, training isn't even an option." Keanu could see the pain in their eyes, the frustration of wanting more but being held back by circumstances beyond their control. He knew they had probably shared this story before, only to be met with pity or empty promises. Keanu's compassion. "You've been through so much," Keanu said, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "Losing your parents, your home. I can't imagine how hard that must have been. But what stands out to me is how strong you've been for each other. You've kept going, even when the world gave you every reason to stop." Ava blinked back tears, and Aaron looked down, his jaw tight. "We've had to," Aaron said. "But it doesn't feel like enough. Every time we try to get ahead, something pulls us back." Keanu nodded. "I hear you. And I want you to know, your story matters. You matter." Ava looked at him, her eyes filled with both gratitude and uncertainty. "You really mean that?" "I do," Keanu said. "And I want to help. I know you've been let down before, but I'm not here to make empty promises. I'm going to do everything I can to help you rebuild, step by step." Hesitant hope. The twins exchanged another glance, their skepticism evident. They had learned to be cautious, to guard their hope. "We've heard that before," Aaron said bluntly, though his tone wasn't unkind. Keanu met his gaze with quiet determination. "I get it. You've been let down, and you don't owe me your trust right away. But give me a chance to prove it to you." Ava nodded slowly. "Okay," she said. "We'll give you a chance." Keanu smiled. "That's all I ask." As they left the park that day, Ava and Aaron felt a cautious flicker of hope. They didn't know what Keanu had in mind, but for the first time in a long while, they felt like someone truly cared. For Keanu, their story had ignited a resolve to take action, because he knew he couldn't walk away from these two remarkable siblings without doing something to help. A quiet act of kindness. As Keanu left the park that day, Ava and Aaron's story weighed heavily on his mind. Their strength in the face of unimaginable hardship had moved him deeply, but it was their quiet resilience and the unshakable bond they shared that stayed with him the most. He couldn't walk away from them knowing what he now knew. They deserved more than just kind words, they deserved a chance to rebuild their lives. Setting plans in motion. That evening, Keanu sat at his kitchen table, his phone in hand and a notebook filled with scribbled ideas in front of him. He reached out to a trusted friend who worked in social services, explaining the twins' situation in detail. "They're still so young," he said. "They've been through so much, and they've managed to stay together. I want to make sure they get the support they need, not just temporary help, but something that sets them up for the future." His friend listened carefully and assured Keanu that they could help. "There's a shelter in the city that works specifically with young adults. It's safe, clean, and focused on long-term solutions. I'll reach out to them and make the arrangements." "Thank you," Keanu said, his voice filled with gratitude. "And one more thing, let's make sure they have a financial cushion. I don't want them worrying about where their next meal is coming from or how they'll get through the week." His friend agreed, promising to handle the details discreetly. Keanu also reached out to a contact in a local charity, discussing options for educational and career support. He wanted to ensure Ava and Aaron had access to the resources they needed to pursue their dreams. Delivering the news. 2 days later, Keanu texted Ava to ask if they could meet again. The twins arrived at the park, their expressions a mix of curiosity and caution. Keanu greeted them warmly and gestured for them to sit on the same bench where they'd shared their story. "I've been thinking about you two a lot," he began, his tone serious but kind. "And I've set a few things in motion to help." Ava and Aaron exchanged a wary glance, clearly unsure of what to expect. "What do you mean?" Aaron asked. Keanu explained the arrangements he had made, a safe place for them to stay, access to counseling and support services, and a financial fund to cover their basic needs while they got back on their feet. "I know it might feel like a lot all at once," Keanu said. "But I want you to know this isn't charity, it's an investment in two incredible people who deserve a chance to build the lives they want." Overwhelmed by generosity. Ava's eyes filled with tears as she listened. "You really did all of this, for us?" she asked, her voice trembling. Keanu nodded. "You trusted me with your story. I'm just following through on my promise." Aaron, usually the more guarded of the two, struggled to find words. "This doesn't feel real," he finally said. "People don't just do this." "I understand," Keanu replied gently. "And it's okay to take your time to believe it. All I ask is that you take this step forward, one day at a time. You've already come so far on your own." Lingering doubts. Despite their gratitude, Ava and Aaron couldn't completely shake their doubts. They had been let down so many times before, offered help that never materialized or promises that were broken. But something about Keanu felt different. His sincerity, his quiet determination, and the way he listened without judgment gave them a glimmer of hope. "Thank you," Ava said, her voice barely above a whisper. "We'll try. We'll try to believe it's real." Keanu smiled. "That's all I ask." A quiet resolve. As the twins walked away from the park that day, holding the information Keanu had given them, they felt a mixture of hope and fear. They were overwhelmed by his generosity, yet the scars of their past made it hard to fully trust that their luck had changed. For Keanu, seeing their cautious optimism only strengthened his resolve. He knew their journey wouldn't be easy, but he was determined to stand by them, quietly supporting them as they began to rebuild their lives. He wasn't interested in recognition or thanks, his only goal was to see Ava and Aaron get the future they deserved. A life-changing opportunity. Ava and Aaron had spent the past few weeks at the shelter Keanu had arranged for them. For the first time in over a year, they had a safe place to sleep, warm meals, and a support network that made them feel like they weren't just surviving, they were starting to rebuild. But even with this newfound stability, they still hesitated to believe that their fortunes had truly changed. One crisp morning, as they finished breakfast in the shelter's communal dining area, the twins were surprised to see Keanu walk through the doors. Dressed simply in jeans and a leather jacket, he carried an unassuming bag in one hand and greeted the staff warmly before heading toward Ava and Aaron. "Keanu!" Ava exclaimed, rising to her feet. "What are you doing here?" Keanu smiled, setting the bag down on the table. "I told you I'd keep my promise, didn't I? I've got some news for you. Scholarships and mentors." The twins sat down, their eyes fixed on Keanu as he pulled out two neatly folded packets of papers from his bag. He placed one in front of Ava and the other in front of Aaron. "These," Keanu said, his voice filled with quiet pride, "are scholarship offers for both of you." Ava's hands flew to her mouth, her eyes wide. "Scholarships?" she whispered, almost afraid to believe it. Keanu nodded. "Ava, this one is from a program that supports aspiring teachers. They've agreed to cover your tuition, books, and supplies. They've also paired you with a mentor, Mrs. Jensen, a retired teacher who helps young educators find their footing. She's excited to meet you." Ava's hands trembled as she held the packet. Tears welled in her eyes. "I don't even know what to say," she said. "I thought this dream was over." Keanu turned to Aaron. "And this one is for you, Aaron. It's from a culinary institute that specializes in hands-on training. They've partnered you with Chef Marcus, one of the best in the city. He's agreed to take you on as an apprentice and help you hone your skills." Aaron blinked rapidly, struggling to process the words. "An apprenticeship? With a real chef?" he asked, his voice thick with emotion. "Exactly," Keanu replied. "You'll get to learn from the best and build the foundation for your future career." Dreams within reach. The twins stared at the packets in front of them, their minds racing. For so long, their dreams had seemed distant, unattainable. Now, they were being handed the tools to make them a reality. "I don't know how to thank you," Ava said, her voice breaking. "You've given us so much, more than we ever could have asked for." Aaron nodded, his usual guarded demeanor replaced by a rare vulnerability. "We've spent so long just trying to survive. This is the first time it feels like we can actually live." Keanu leaned forward, his expression earnest. "You don't have to thank me. All I want is for you to take these opportunities and make the most of them. You both have so much potential, and I know you're going to do amazing things." A renewed sense of purpose. Over the next hour, Keanu went over the details of the programs with the twins, answering their questions and reassuring them about the journey ahead. He encouraged them to embrace the challenges, reminding them that they weren't alone. "I'll be here," Keanu said as they wrapped up their conversation. "Whatever you need, whether it's advice, support, or just someone to talk to, I'm not going anywhere." Ava and Aaron looked at each other, their faces reflecting the same mix of gratitude and determination. For the first time in years, they felt like their futures were within reach. A transformative moment. As Keanu prepared to leave, Ava stopped him. "Why?" she asked softly. "Why are you doing all of this for us?" Keanu paused, considering his words. "Because I've been in dark places too," he said finally. "I know what it feels like to lose people you love and to feel like the world has left you behind. But I also know how much one act of kindness can change everything. You two deserve that chance." Aaron stepped forward and extended his hand. "You've given us more than a chance," he said. "You've given us hope." Keanu shook Aaron's hand firmly, his eyes meeting both twins. "Then take that hope and run with it," he said. "Because the world needs more people like you." As Keanu left the shelter, Ava and Aaron sat together, poring over the scholarship details with renewed energy. They had faced unimaginable loss and hardship, but now, with Keanu's support, they were ready to take their first steps toward a brighter future. A new beginning. Months passed, and Ava and Aaron embarked on their respective journeys, their lives slowly transforming from survival to growth. Ava threw herself into her studies, discovering a passion for teaching that reignited the dreams she thought she had lost forever. She worked closely with her mentor, Mrs. Jensen, who became both a guide and a source of encouragement. "You have a natural gift, Ava," Mrs. Jensen told her after a practice session teaching a group of young children. "Not just for teaching, but for inspiring. Your students are going to see that, and they'll carry it with them for the rest of their lives." Ava's heart swelled with pride. For the first time in years, she felt like she had a purpose, one that went beyond just getting through the day. Aaron's journey. Aaron thrived under Chef Marcus's guidance at the Culinary Institute. His hands, once used to assembling sandwiches in makeshift shelters, now worked deftly with fresh ingredients, crafting dishes he never imagined he could make. Chef Marcus was strict but fair, challenging Aaron to push past his limits. "You've got raw talent, kid," Chef Marcus said one evening as Aaron plated a delicate dessert. "But talent means nothing without hard work. Keep this up, and one day, you'll run your own kitchen." Aaron grinned, the spark of confidence he had long buried beginning to shine through. He dreamed of opening a small restaurant one day, a place where people could gather and feel at home, just like the shelter had made him feel when he had nowhere else to go. Keanu's quiet support. Throughout their journeys, Keanu remained a constant presence in Ava and Aaron's lives. Though he stayed out of the spotlight, he frequently checked in with them, celebrating their milestones and offering words of encouragement when challenges arose. When Ava completed her first teaching practicum, she received a bouquet of flowers with a simple note, "Proud of you. Keep going. Keanu." When Aaron nailed his first solo dinner service at the Institute, a small, handwritten card arrived, "A chef in the making. Can't wait to taste your food someday. Keanu." The twins often wondered how someone as busy and famous as Keanu Reeves could find the time to support them so personally, but his steady kindness reminded them of the promise he had made, and kept. A reflection on kindness. One crisp autumn evening, Ava and Aaron sat together on a bench overlooking the park where they had first met Keanu. Ava held her teaching certificate in her hands, while Aaron thumbed through pictures of his culinary creations on his phone. "It feels like a lifetime ago," Aaron said, breaking the comfortable silence. Ava nodded. "It does. I still can't believe we approached him that day. What were we even thinking?" "That we had nothing left to lose," Aaron replied. He looked at her and smiled. "And everything to gain, apparently." They sat quietly for a moment, reflecting on how far they had come. The desperation that had once consumed them had been replaced by hope, confidence, and a sense of purpose. And it had all started with a chance encounter and one man's willingness to listen. Keanu's quiet observation. Unbeknownst to the twins, Keanu stood nearby, leaning against a tree and watching them with a quiet smile. He had no intention of interrupting their moment of reflection, this was their story now. He was content knowing that his small act of kindness had helped set them on a path toward a brighter future. As Ava and Aaron stood to leave, their laughter carrying through the crisp evening air, Keanu turned and walked away, his heart full. For him, their success was its own reward, a reminder that even the simplest gestures could create ripples of change. A second chance. The story of Ava and Aaron wasn't just about survival, it was about renewal, hope, and the power of human connection. They had found their way forward, not because of one man's fame or fortune, but because of his compassion and their own determination to rise above their circumstances. As they walked away from the park that night, Ava and Aaron smiled, their hearts light with gratitude for the stranger who had become a part of their journey. And somewhere in the distance, Keanu Reeves smiled too, knowing he had played a small but meaningful role in their new beginning.